All right, guys, welcome back. Last week, whenever we did our Faithful Friday video, I realized that the sound wasn't very good quality. I had a real hard time being able to see what we were saying and stuff like that, or hear what we were saying. So we went ahead and tried to switch over to what our headphones and stuff that we use whenever we're doing the gaming or Magic the Gathering. So we'll see how that works. So this today will be Genesis, probably 5 through 9, 5 through 8, something like that. I think it's 5 through 9. But starting out from when Adam to Noah. So we will try to find some specific discussion points and things like that to talk about while we're doing it. I'm going to go ahead and start reading. It's Faithful Fridays here on Ragnarok Ranch, and we're going to start learning about from Adam to Noah. Genesis 5. This is the record of the family line of Adam. When God created humankind, he made them in the likeness of God. He created them male and female, and when they were created, he blessed them and named them humankind. When Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered his son in his own likeness, according to his image, and the name given Seth. The length of time Adam lived after he became the father of Seth was 800 years. During this time, he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Adam was 930 years, and then he died. When Seth had lived 105 years, he became the father of Enosh. Seth lived 807 years after he became the father of Enosh, and he has other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Seth was 912 years, and then he died. When Enosh had lived 90 years, he became the father of Kenan. Enosh lived 815 years after he became the father of Kenan, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Enosh was 905 years, and then he died. When Kenan had lived 70 years, he became the father of Mahalalel. Kenan lived 840 years after he became the father of Mahalalel, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Kenan was 910 years, and then he died. When Mahalalel had lived 65 years, he became the father of Jared. Mahalalel lived 830 years after he became the father of Jared, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Mahalalel was 895 years, and then he died. When Jared had lived 162 years, he became the father of Enoch. Jared lived 800 years after he became the father of Enoch, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Jared was 962 years. Excuse me, and then he died. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. After he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked with God for 300 years, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Enoch was 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and then he disappeared because God took him away. It's important to note there's only a couple of people in the entire book that is stated about, and it's basically Enoch and Ezekiel that go up with God and don't actually die.
I
And
thought
then there's
Enoch and Elijah.
Elijah, you're right, and Ezekiel, it's Elijah, obviously. And then there's also an old conspiracy theory that whenever the apostles, I forget, they were asking Jesus like how they died or something like that, and whenever he did, he says, "What is it to you if this man, lives until I return or whatever?" So there's an old conspiracy theory that John the Baptist is still alive, or not John the Baptist. I'm sorry, John the Apostle is still alive because Jesus said, "Was it to you if he stays alive till I come back?" Blah blah blah. I don't remember the exact part in the book, but I've looked it up several times. It actually does say that, but it doesn't necessarily. Kind of a stretch to link that up with he's living forever. You know what I mean?
I think it was in Revelation where it talks about the end of times. It'll be the two people that never died are brought back.
Mm-hmm. When Methuselah had lived 187 years, became the father of Lamech. Methuselah lived 782 years after he became the father of Lamech, and they had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Methuselah was 969 years, and then he died. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he had a son. He named him Noah, saying, "This one will bring us comfort from our labor and from our painful toil of our hands because of the ground that the Lord has cursed." Lamech lived 595 years after he became the father of Noah, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Lamech was 777 years, and then he died. After Noah was 500 years old, he became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
Okay, moving on to Genesis chapter 6. When man began to multiply on the face of the land, and the daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Um, it doesn't say specifically who the sons of God are.
Mm-hmm.
There are two main theologies of thinking. One of them is that the fallen angels
Mm-hmm.
were coming down and taking human
Creating Nephilim.
wives. is the most common thought after, but a lot of them also. There's another theory that a lot of them are male descendants of Seth who married the ungodly descendants of Cain.
Hmm.
Um, but again, nobody really knows. Then it said, "The Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, they bore them children. These were the mighty men of old, the men of renown. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intention and thoughts in the hearts was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart." That word regretted is also
Hmm.
translated to feel sorrow or to be grieved.
Hmm.
Uh,
I really always enjoy hearing about the Hebrew too, because I don't think you can really dive into what things actually mean until you like have actually explored. Because Hebrew's got weird multiple meanings, and it's just like
mm,
English. You know what I mean? The word blue in English can mean a ton of different things, and
right.
same thing in Hebrew.
Well, and ancient Hebrews used a block
Yeah,
style
they
thinking.
thought completely differently. That's why it was such a revolution whenever the Greeks come around with their new age way of thinking, philosophy, and things like that.
Yeah. Da, 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 da. So the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I've created from the face of the land, man, animals, and creeping things, and birds of the heaven, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God, and Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt. For all flesh.
Guys, we got a pause. We have a sick baby, and I think he's up.
Is he?
He's really warm again too, by the way.
I just went and checked on him. He didn't have a fever when I got out.
Seems fine. Crack the door, honestly. That way he can come walking in if he wants.
I'm ready to wake him up, though.
Yeah. Okay. And so I just realized I never stopped the audio. So you guys probably got to hear us talk about the baby being sick and if he's awake and what we should do about it. Sorry about that. So the audio is going to be a little bit longer in the video, but here we go back in again.
Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence throughout them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark is 300 cubits, its breadth is 50 cubits, its height is 30 cubits. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above, and set the door of the ark in the side. Make it with a lower, second, and third decks. For behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all the flesh in which is the breath of life under heaven. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons' wives. You shall bring 2 of every sort, and keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Of the birds according to their kinds, of the animals according to their kinds, of every creeping thing on the ground according to its kind. 2 of every sort shall come in to you to keep them alive. Also, take with you every sort of food that is eaten and store it up. It shall serve as food for you and for them. Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him.
So I watched this. No, I YouTube scroll a lot. If you guys don't know, that's how we kind of got this thing all started. So I was watching a thing about the engineering design of the Ark itself and like how because it's always kind of looked like a weird boat. You know what I mean? It's got this over top and stuff like that. But after the people that recreated it, because there's somebody that I guess had an eyewitness account of discovering the Ark. And so the way that it's designed, it will perfectly cast sun on all 3 of the decks
Mm-hmm.
and keeps the rain like it was perfectly engineered. It's really, really weird.
It says in modern measurements down here, that it would have been about 450 feet long,
So
70,
four baseball fields, 4.5,
75 feet wide,
almost a football field wide.
45 feet high,
That's not as big as I thought, but
and about 43,000 tons.
no,
The inside capacity would have been 1.4 million cubic feet,
wow, that's a lot of feet.
with approximately 95,700 square feet of deck
Yeah.
space.
It's also important to remember that it says of every kind, not of every species.
Right.
Right. So, for all we know, this could be where all that starts. All the species start to break
Yeah.
off is whenever.
One equine, not one of every kind of
Right,
equine.
and
One
then
bovine,
they
not at one
get
of
up.
every
They get
kind.
off the boat. Everybody spreads out, and
Then they evolve from there.
thousands of years later, you know what I mean? And I don't know if it's necessarily evolved, but I think that it probably breeding and things like that. I think it's the same thing as like
I
broccoli.
don't use the word evolve or evolution to
Right.
refer to the theory of
Dribble.
evolution,
Right.
but changes in your atmosphere and your environment will cause
Yeah.
your body to
Yeah.
evolve and adapt in different
Right.
ways. That's when I say evolve, that's what I'm
Evolve
discussing.
is more adaptation than it is. It's actually
Evolving.
yeah.
I do want to point out that it says that they went into Noah. I lost my spot. Anyway, I was reading more about the Hebrew words and stuff, and whenever you go into someone in this term that they use, it means you are brought under their protection, under their blanket of
Right. Safety
family.
net.
Thank you. That's what I needed.
Okay. So continuing on, and 7. The Lord said to Noah, "Come into the ark, and you and all your household, for I consider you godly among this generation. You must take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, the male and its mate, 2 of every kind of unclean animal, the male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird. 7 pairs, by the way, of every kind of bird. So there was a lot more birds, I guess. In the sky, male and female, to preserve their offspring in the face of the entire earth. For in 7 days I will cause it to rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the ground every living thing that I have made." And Noah did all that the Lord commanded. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters engulfed the earth. Noah entered the ark along with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives, because of the flood waters. Pairs of clean animals, of unclean animals, of birds, and of everything that creeps along the ground, male and female, come into the ark to Noah, just as God had commanded him. And after 7 days, the flood waters engulfed the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day all the foundations of the great deep burst open, and the floodgates of the heavens were open. I would also like to point out that the irony of the fact that it says fountains of the great deep burst open, that statement kind of supports the firmament idea at the bottom of the ocean that people talk about, because there's supposed to be a firmament down there that separates the water from the water, like it says in the very, very beginning. And that essentially that's what opened, right? On that very day, Noah entered the ark, accompanied by his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, along with his wife and his sons' 3 wives. They entered along with every living creature after its kind, every animal after its kind, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth after its kind, even the snakes, and every bird after its kind, everything with wings. And I think that that's a very, very important note. Snakes are still around.
Mhm.
Even though that snake led to the fall of them, you know what I mean? And it never says that that snake is Satan.
No.
It's applied heavily, you know what I mean? But snakes still made the cut. So if you feel like that you're not going to make the cut to the boat, remember the person that caused the original fall still got to get on the boat. You know what I mean? If that doesn't, there's all kinds of people that are like, "Oh, God hates this and God hates that." God doesn't hate anything. He loves it so much that he even was able to let that snake come on. You know what I mean? Those that entered were male and female, just as God commanded him. Then the Lord shut him in, which is also important because it actually says that he closed the door. A flood engulfed the earth for 40 days. As the waters increased, they lifted the ark and raised it above the earth. The waters completely overwhelmed the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the waters. The waters completely inundated the earth so that even all the high mountains under the entire sky were covered. The waters rose more than 20 feet above the mountains, and all living things that moved on the earth died, including the birds, domestic animals, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all humankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. So the Lord destroyed every living thing that was on the surface of the ground, including people, animals, creatures that creep along the ground, and birds of the sky. They were wiped off the earth. Only Noah and those who were with him in the ark survived. The waters prevailed over the earth for 150 days. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and domestic animals that were with him in the ark. God caused the wind to blow over the earth, and the waters receded. Fountains of the deep and the floodgates of heaven were closed, and the rain stopped falling from the sky. The waters kept receding steadily from the earth, so that they had gone down by the end of the 150 days. On the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on one of the mountains of Ararat. The waters kept on receding until the 10th month. On the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. At the end of the 40 days, Noah opened the window and he had made in the ark and sent out a raven. Kept flying back and forth until the waters had dried up on the earth. When Noah sent out a dove to see if the waters had receded from the surface of the ground, the dove could not find a resting place for its feet because water still covered the surface of the entire earth, and so it returned to Noah in the ark. He stretched out his hand, took the dove, and brought it back into the ark. He waited 7 more days and then sent out the dove again from the ark. When the dove returned to him in the evening, there was a freshly plucked olive leaf in its beak. No one knew that the waters had receded from the earth. He waited another 7 days and sent the dove out again, but it did not return to him this time. In Noah's 601st year, in the first day of the month, the waters had dried up on the earth, and Noah removed the covering from the ark, and saw the surface of the ground was dry. And by the 27th day of the 2nd month, the earth was dry. Then God spoke to Noah and said, "Come out of the ark, you, your wife, your sons, and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you all the living creatures that are with you. Bring out every living thing, including the birds, animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Let them increase and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." Noah went out along with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives. Every living creature, every creeping thing, every bird, and everything that moves on the earth went out of the ark in their groups. And Noah built an altar to the Lord. He then took some of every kind of clean animal and clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled the soothing aroma and said to himself, "I will never again curse the ground because of humankind. Even though the inclination of their minds is evil from childhood, I'll never again destroy everything that lives as I have just done. While the earth continues to exist, planting time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night will not cease."
So my Bible over here has a chronology of the Noah's time in the ark. So on second month, 10th day is when the announcement of the flood starts. He doesn't come out of the ark until the 27th month of the second day of the next year. It says that the total estimated time in the ark was 370 days.
27th month.
27th day of the second month.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. So.
Well, it's the Hebrew calendar, not our calendar.
Yeah, that's what I was like. I don't know nothing about the Hebrew calendar. I was like, I didn't know there was 27
I think there's
months
only
or whatever.
12 because it shows. But most people are like, oh, 40 days of rain. And then, no, it's over a year on there.
Yep. They're in there a long time.
With your immediate family and your kids' wives.
Yep. I mean, granted, there's a lot of walking room. I'm sure there's a lot to do because
a lot of animals, a lot of poop to clean up, a lot of feeding to do, I'm sure. But that just
still,
it was a large ark. Maybe there was room to get away from each other. Maybe they got along better than everybody these days.
Yeah, they're pretty godly people.
Well, it says Noah was. It never says anything about his family. It just says that Noah found favor.
Yeah, and even and fast forward just a little bit, not great things happen. Yeah.
It is curious to note that. Oh, is it his sons?
Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
So it says that Ham is the youngest, but he's always listed second. Which is kind of odd because usually you would expect them to be listed in order of birth.
That's weird, they're not. I wonder where they get that information. How they garnered it,
I'm sure there are people that spend lots of time studying.
Yeah. Goodness, little guy.
A big cough.
Yeah, I got cold or something, guys. We had a big winter storm. As you can see, back on the back porch, there's lots of snow and stuff going on. So, kids were out playing. I'm sure it's just normal cold type stuff.
He is beautifying my Bible notes.
He does enjoy the color. So God's covenant with humankind through Noah. Then God blessed Noah and his son and said to them, "Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. Every living creature of the earth and every bird of the sky will be terrified of you. Everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea and under your authority. You may eat any moving thing that lives as I give you the green plants. I now give you everything. But you must not eat meat with its lifeblood in it. For your lifeblood I will surely exact punishment. From every living creature, I will exact punishment from each person. I will exact punishment for the life of the individual since man was his relative." That's very interesting, seeing as how this is basically saying this is the first time God said to eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
That means they were all eating.
Fight.
Who knows what kind of flora and fauna back then.
Well, and one of the things it said earlier in Genesis in the garden was that he gives you every plant that bears fruit.
Yeah.
That most vegetables aren't fruit; they're
Right.
roots.
Right.
But now you have everything.
Yep. Whoever sheds human blood by the humans must his blood be shed, for in God's image God has made humankind. But as for you, be fruitful, multiply, increase abundantly in the earth, and multiply in it. God said to Noah and his sons, "Look, I now confirm my covenant with you and your descendants after you." This is the very, very, very. So this is the second covenant. So he made the first covenant with. Oh no, I'm sorry. This is the first covenant. This is well before Abram.
This is the first one that's called a covenant.
Yeah,
A
well
lot of
before Abram.
people consider the command to
Adam.
dominate and subdue the earth as a covenant.
Yeah, but this is
The first time it's
yeah.
mentioned.
I feel like the one with Adam and Eve has a much more parent to infantile like feeling, like it's not they're so young that they're like, this is what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then now at Noah's times it's more like, this is what we're gonna do together.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Adam's times God said, this is how it is, this is what it's going to be, blah blah blah. Just like Adam and Eve were infants, you know what I mean? And they were the very, very first people. They were, who knows how they were. But this is the first time that I really feel like you will be responsible for your part of the covenant as well. Because now I don't know if that's because of
not this is what your job is,
right,
but this is what you have
this
to
is
do in
our
order
agreement
to gain reward.
Yeah. And if this is eventually it becomes, these are the consequences for not doing it. So, and with every living creature that is with you, including the birds and domestic animals, and every living creature of the earth with you, all those that come out of the ark with you, every living creature of the earth, I confirm my covenant with you. Never again will all living things be wiped out by the waters of a flood. Never again will a flood destroy the earth. What did you find, buddy? Yeah. So God said to Noah, "This is the guarantee of the covenant that I am confirming between me and all living things that are on the earth." I'm pretty sure that's supposed to say the rainbow. What do you got on 8 or 917?
17 or 13?
Mine says 17.
Well, mine's on 13 from where
Oh,
we
no,
were
I'm sorry. I must have skipped the whole thing. And God said, "This is the guarantee of the covenant I'm making with you and every..." I did. I'm sorry, guys. That's my fault. God said, "This is the guarantee of the covenant I'm making with you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all the subsequent generations. I will place my rainbow in the clouds, and it will become a guarantee of the covenant between me and the earth." Ironic. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and a rainbow appears in the clouds, then I remember my covenant with you and all living things. All living creatures of all kinds. I'm sorry. Never again will the waters become a flood and destroy all living things. When the rainbow is in the clouds, I will notice it and remember the perpetual covenant between God and all living creatures of all kinds that are on the earth. That's very interesting. Specifically says, when the rainbow is in the clouds, I will notice it and remember the perpetual covenant between God and all living creatures, blah, blah. Now, this might sound controversial, that we are not anti-LGB. We are not. We have a great deal of friends that are in those first three letters. And I think for the most part, there's a lot of people that are just living good lives, doing the best they can, just like we are. And, at the end of the day, it's not my right to say anything about how anyone lives their life. But it is my duty to ensure that I at least let them know that Christ loves them, I love them, and that I don't care what you do in the flesh, that we're just going to keep on keeping on being people that are going to eventually, hopefully, be in the kingdom together. But It is ironic to me because, like it or not, it's spoken about in the Bible in a negative way. It says not to do it. I'm not going to get into specifics because I think that anyone who talks, nobody preaching from Deuteronomy ever brought someone who left the church because of the LGB part of their lives back. It's never happened. You can't tell somebody they're an abomination and at the same time say, "Oh, well, God loves you." You know, like,
How are you going to call somebody an abomination if you're trying to tell them you love them?
right, exactly. So, like, I mean, it's totally contradictory. And so, like, anyone, and this is the disconnect because people who try to focus on the Old Testament and all that stuff forget that Jesus literally comes and says that you cannot follow the law. The law is there to show you that you are dirty. It is not the shower to clean yourself. Christ Jesus is the only thing, his work on the cross is the only thing that'll absolve you of your sins. Doesn't matter what you do, say, how much money you contribute to a charity. If you have not accepted that Christ did his work on the cross and tried to do his will, that doesn't matter. Nothing else matters anyway. Oh, buddy. Yeah, I'm trying to listen to Dad talk. He's loud.
Baby.
Yeah. So I'll finish this up. We just got a little bit left, and the baby's needing some probably breakfast and attention. He's usually up pretty early though. So God said to Noah, "This is the guarantee of the covenant that I am confirming between me and all living things that are on the earth. The curse on Canaan. Sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now Ham is the father of Canaan. These were the three sons of Noah, and from the whole earth was populated. Noah, a man of the soil, began to plant a vineyard. Then he drank some of the wine, he got drunk, and uncovered himself inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness and told his two brothers who were outside. Shem and Japheth took the garment and placed it on their shoulders. Then they walked in backwards and covered up their father's nakedness. Their faces were turned the other way, so they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah woke from his drunken stupor, he learned that his youngest son had done to him. So he said, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves he will be to his brothers." He also said, "Worthy of praise is the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God enlarge Japheth's territory and numbers. May he live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be the slave of Japheth." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. The entire lifetime of Noah was 950 years, and then he died. All right, guys. So we'll start back up with Genesis 10 next time. Thanks for joining. Welcome back. We just finished up Genesis 9. So we are going to start at 10. Tiff has been nice enough to go through and start doing some prescribed reading. That way we know we have some talking points and stuff like that to go over. So with that knowledge, we are going to get right into it. So we are on Genesis 10. The precursor to mine says the Table of Nations. This is the account of Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood. The sons of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tyrus. The sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Riphtah, and Togarmah. The sons of Javan were Elisha, Tarshish, and Kedem, and the Dodanim. From these, the coastlands of the nations were separated in their lands, each one according to its language, according to their families by their nations. Sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, and the Sabtica. The sons of Ramah were Sheba and Dedan. Cush was the father of Nimrod. He began to be a valiant warrior on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Primary regions of his kingdom were Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah, and Rezin, which is between Nineveh and the great city Calah. Mizraim was the father of the Ludites, Anamites, Lehabites, Naphtalites, Potherites, Kosalites, from whom the Philistines came, and Caphtorites. Canaan was the father of Sidon, his firstborn, Heth, the Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Arkites, Sinites, Arvadites, Zimrites, and Hamathites. Eventually, the families of the Canaanites were scattered, and the borders of Canaan extended from Sidon all the way to Gerar, as far as Gaza, and all the way to Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, as far as Lasha. These are the sons of Ham according to their families, according to their languages, by their lands, and by their nations. And sons were also born to Shem, the older brother of Japheth, the father of all sons of Eber. Sons of Shem were Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram were Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mosh. Arphaxad was the father of Shelah, and Shelah was the father of Eber. Two sons were born to Eber. One was named Peleg, because in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Hoktan. Hoktan was the father of Almadad, Shelaphah, Hazarabath, Terah, Hadaram, Uzal, Diklah, Obal, Abimal, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were sons of Hoktan. Their dwelling place was from Mesha all the way to Saphar in the eastern hills. These are the sons of Shem according to their families, according to their languages, by the lands, and according to their nations. These are the families of the sons of Noah, according to their genealogies, by their nations, and from these nations spread over the earth after the flood.
So before we move on to chapter 11, which is the Tower of Babel, if you're familiar with the Tower of Babel, it talks about God confounding the languages and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. But if you go back in chapter 10, where it's talking about, I think it was Nimrod
Mm-hmm.
and his family descendants and all the nations and languages, each with
Mm-hmm.
their own, the Bible isn't always written in exact chronology. Chapter 10, some of the events in chapter 10, because it's the genealogy, spans several generations.
But after.
Yep, would have been after the flood and the tower. Sorry. Okay, so chapter 11. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words, and the people migrated from the east. They found a plain in the land of Shinar, and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. They said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower, with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the earth." And the Lord came down to see the tower and the city and the children of man had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they all have one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord dispersed them from over the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of the earth. Shem's descendants. These are the generations of Shem. When Shem was 100 years old, he fathered Aprashad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived and fathered Aprashad 500 years after, and he had other sons and daughters. When Aprashad lived 35 years, he fathered Shelah, and Aprashad lived after he fathered Shelah 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Shelah had lived 30 years, he fathered Eber. Shelah lived and fathered Eber 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Eber had lived 34 years, he fathered Peleg, and Eber lived after he fathered Peleg 430 years and had other sons and daughters. When Peleg had lived 30 years, he fathered Reu, and Peleg lived after he fathered Reu 209 years and had other sons and daughters. When Reu had lived 32 years, he had fathered Serug, and Reu lived after he fathered Serug 207 years and had other sons and daughters. Then Serug had lived 30 years, he fathered Nahor, and Serug lived after he fathered Nahor 200 years and had other sons and daughters. When Nahor had lived 29 years, he fathered Terah, and Nahor lived after he fathered Terah 119 years and had other sons and daughters. When Terah had lived 70 years, he fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran fathered Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his kindred in Ur of the Chaldeans. And Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Ishka. Now Sarai was barren, she had no children. Terah took Abram his son, hold on, and Lot the son of Haran his grandson, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go down to the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. In the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran.
Boy, they sure don't talk about Abram's brother a lot.
No.
Because he had two of them.
Hmm.
I mean, Haran died, and they never says anything about the other guy. I don't believe.
I believe Abram sends his servant back, and that's, uh, or maybe that's when Isaac sends his servant, but it would be back to that family.
Yeah. So someone generations later finds a wife from his own people,
Yeah.
and that's how he finds Rebecca, I believe. And then I can't remember if that's Esau and Jacob whenever and Jacob goes and works for her,
Yes.
because that's the guy goes and says, Lord, whoever is meant to be my person's wife, have her
Offer
come
me a
out
drink in a
and
camel's.
something about water. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. The obedience of Abram. Excuse me. And the Lord said to Abram, go out from your country, your relatives, and your father's household to the land that I will show you. Then I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you, and I will make your game great, so that you will exemplify divine blessing. I will bless those who bless you, but the one who treats you lightly I must curse, so that all the families of the earth may receive blessings through you. So Abram left, just as the Lord had told him to do, and Lot went with him. Now Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all the possessions they had accumulated and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they left for the land of Canaan. They entered the land of Canaan. Abram traveled through the land as far as the oak tree of Morah at Shechem. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants I will give this land. So Abram built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. And he moved from there to the hill country east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and worshipped the Lord. Abram continually journeyed by stages down to the Negev. There was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to stay for a while because the famine was severe. As he approached Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, look, I know that you are a beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but will keep you alive. So tell them you are my sister, so that it may go well for me, because of you and my life will be spared on account of you. When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. When Pharaoh officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. So Abram's wife was taken into the household of Pharaoh, and he did treat Abram well on account of her. Abram received sheep and cattle, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. But the Lord struck Pharaoh and his household with severe disease because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh summoned Abram and said, what is this you have done to me? Why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her to be my wife? Now here is your wife, take her and go. Pharaoh gave his men orders from Abram, gave his men orders about Abram, and so they expelled him along with his wife and all his possessions. That is pretty crazy. Of a time to have to live in. I can't imagine having to tell somebody that your wife is your sister. But I don't know. I mean, for all intents and purposes, that kind of stuff is still going on over there. You know what I mean? They're still having lots of hard times.
Well, and technically, Abram only told a half truth. She was his half sister.
Yeah, yeah, which is totally fine back then. But that is 9 through 12, guys, or 10 through 12. So we will pick back up the next time, and then we will get this all compiled, and we will have everything out for you guys the next episode. Keep joining back, and don't forget to like and subscribe and share our videos, guys. It means a lot. Thanks. See you next time. All right, guys. We are working on Genesis 13. Hopefully, everybody can hear and everything. So here we are again, Faithful Fridays. Um, I know we stop in between every little chapter. We record on multiple days, so if you're seeing the same welcome thing over and over again, it's because we were able to get a little bit more than we thought we were able to. Anyway, so on to Genesis 13. So Abram went up from Egypt into the Negev. He took his wife and all his possessions with him, as well as Lot. And he journeyed from place to place from the Negev as far as Bethel. He returned to the place where he had pitched his tent at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai. This was the place where he had first built the altar, and there Abram worshipped the Lord. And Allah, who was traveling with Abram, also had flocks, herds, and tents. but the land could not support them. While they were living side by side because their possessions were so great, they were not able to live alongside one another. So there were quarrels between Abram's herdsmen and Lot's herdsmen. Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no quarreling between me and you, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are close relatives. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself now from me. If you go to the left, then I will go to the right, but if you go to the right, then I will go to the left." Lot looked up and saw the whole region of the Jordan. He noticed that all of it was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, all the way to Zoar. Lot chose for himself the whole region of the Jordan and traveled towards the east. So the relatives separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, but Lot settled among the cities of the Jordan plain and pitched his tents next to Sodom. After Lot had departed, the Lord said to Abram, "Look, from the place where you stand to the north, south, east, and west, I will give you all the land that you see to you and your descendants forever. And I will make your descendants like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone is able to count the dust of the earth, then your descendants can also be counted. Get up and walk throughout the land, for I will give it to you." So Abram moved his tents and went to live by the oaks of Mamre in Hebron, and he built an altar to the Lord there.
So it's kind of interesting whenever Lot and Abram separate.
Mm-hmm.
It has been theorized that the reason Lot, even as the nephew and considered the lesser of the two, chose the more prime choice land is because he survived drought and famine and could have possibly not had a trust in the Lord to provide for him. So that's the reason that Lot chose the more fertile land, or at least a theory of to
Mm,
why he would have.
right.
Okay, chapter 14. In the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar.
Look, guys, we're probably going to butcher
Yeah.
a lot of these names, a lot of them. So bear with us.
Cheldorlamor, king of Elam, and title king of Guiom. These kings made war with Bera the king of Sada, Bersha king of Gomorrah, Shinab king of Admah, Sheber king of Zeboam, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, and all these joined forces in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea, which is the Dead Sea, just for reference.
Mm-hmm.
12 years they had served, I want to say
Peter Lomar?
Keter Lomar, yeah. I
Sure.
want to say Charmander.
Yeah.
But in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year,
Kedar Lomar?
yeah, thank you. And the kings who were with him defeated the Rephaim and Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzim and Ham, the Emim in Shiva Kirithaim, and the Horites in the hill country of Seir, as far as El Paran on the
Mm-hmm.
border of the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpah, that is Kadesh, and defeated the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who were dwelling in the Hazan Tamar. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboam, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, went out and they joined battle in the valley of Siddim with.
Kedar Lomar?
Thank you.
King of Elam.
Yes. Title, king of Goam,
Mine,
Amraphel.
mine actually, this is the second time that I've noticed this. Mine actually says title King of Nations.
There's been several times that
Mm-hmm.
yours is
A
different
little
than
bit
mine.
different, yeah.
Did we ever say what version yours was?
Yeah, I think we did in the beginning. I don't remember what it is though. NET. I'm reading the NET.
I'm reading
New
the
English Trans.
ESV.
Yeah.
Okay. No, 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 no. Went
Wait.
out and joined battle in the valley of Sidon. Title Kingdom. Amraphel, king of Shinar. Arioch, king of Elasar. 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Sidon was full of bitumen bits.
Tar pits?
Mine says bitumen.
No, I was just saying what mine says. Mine says tar pits.
As the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into them, and the rest fled into the hill country. I think I had to look that up earlier.
Mm.
So the enemy took all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions. They went away. They also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who was dwelling in Sodom, and his possessions, and went their way. Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and Aner. These were allies of Abram. When Abram heard that his kinsman had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. And he divided his forces against them by night, and his servants, and defeated them and pursued them to Hobah, north of Damascus. Then he brought back all the possessions, and brought back all his kinsmen, and brought back also his kinsman Lot with all his possessions and the women and people. After his return from the defeat of Cord
Get her a little more.
Thank you. And the kings who were with him, the kings of Sodom, went out to meet him at the valley of Sheba. That's the king's valley. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine, and he was the priest most high.
And this is one of the most important instances in Genesis. He is never mentioned before, never mentioned after. Melchizedek is he's a very mysterious person in the Old Testament. He's comes out of nowhere. Abram pays him tribute, and then he leaves out of nowhere. A lot of people think that he's Jesus.
Um, it does say that his name means king of
Mm,
righteousness. Um, and Abram gave him a tenth of everything he had after he got back, and then
yep,
Melchizedek proceeded to bless Abram after
yep,
that.
and it's very super important, and we're gonna read it in just a second. The difference between how Abram reacts to Melchizedek and how he reacts to the other kings.
Mm. Uh, and Melchizedek, the king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of God Most High, and he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted my hand to the Lord God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or sandal strap or anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten, and to share the men and the share of the men who went with me. Let Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre take their share.
So, a lot of people use this reference of Melchizedek to justify tithing. So, because Abram gave him a tenth, blah blah blah, and that's great. If you can give a tenth of everything you have to a church, wonderful for you. I advise you make sure that your church is taking that money and doing something that you think that that money should be done. Because I'm not saying your church is bad. I'm not saying all churches is bad. I'm just saying you can flip on the news on any channel and or Google, bad things about churches, and you see a lot of times where they're misusing tithes, specifically the Latter Day Saints. They're in the news all the time for having malls that were bought by tithing and stuff like that. That's not what it's there for. You're supposed to tithe to support the church and to support the community around you. That's why I always run into problems with any church that really, really pushes the tithing. And if your preacher has a salary, you have a businessman, not a preacher. That's how I feel about it. So I just think that if you're going to be called to that calling, you should be as serious about it. I think you should live at the church. I think you should. I have very strong opinions about things like that, and it usually gets me in trouble, and that's okay because everybody has to find their own way. Everybody has to find what's right. Anyway, chapter 15, the cutting of the covenant. After these things, the Lord's message came to Abram in a vision, not a violent, just a vision. Fear not, Abram, I am your shield and the one who will reward you in great abundance. But Abram said, O sovereign Lord, what will you give me since I continue to be childless, and my heir is Eliezer of Damascus? Abram added, Since you have not given me a descendant, then look, one born in my house will be my heir. But look, the Lord's message came to him. This man will not be your heir, but instead a son who comes from your own body will be your heir. The Lord took him outside and said, Gaze into the sky and count the stars. If you're able to count them, then he said to them, So will your descendants be. Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord credited as his righteousness to him. The Lord said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of the Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess. But Abram said, O sovereign Lord, by what can I know that I am to possess it? The Lord said to him, Take from me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, which this is one of the first times I've actually heard a 3-year old. Usually it's,
This is a different ritual,
yep,
which we'll talk about in just a second.
along with a dove and a young pigeon. So Abram took all these for him, and then cut them in two, and placed each half opposite the other. But he did not cut the birds in half. When birds of prey came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. When the sun went down, Abram fell sound asleep, and great terror overwhelmed him. Then the Lord said to Abram, "Know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign country. They will be enslaved and opposed for 400 years, but I will execute judgment on the nation that they will serve. Afterward, they will come out with many possessions, but as far as you will go to your ancestors in peace, and you be buried at a good old age. In the fourth generation, your descendants will return here, for the sin of Amorites has not yet reached its limit." When the sun had gone down and it was dark, a smoking firepot with a flaming torch passed between the animal parts. That day the Lord made a covenant with Abram. "To your descendants I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates, uh, the land of the Kenites, Kenizzites, Kadamites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites."
So the ritual where they take the animals and cut them in half
Hmm.
and separate them is an old tradition where two people that were trying to make a covenant with each other would do this, and then they would stand and walk through together, and that symbolized that if either person broke or
They would die.
uh, they should be as the animals on the thing.
Mm.
And the significance to this one is Abram didn't pass through that. God alone
Yeah.
passed through the animals. So God's covenant, God's promise is not dependent on Abram following
Hmm.
directions. God is going to make his covenant and his promises come true regardless of your
Well,
participation.
and there's a lot of like between the lines things that you don't realize, like just right there, whenever he tells them that you're going to be enslaved for 400 years, blah blah blah. What's between the lines there, he didn't realize is, hey, yeah, you guys are going to go to Egypt and you're going to be slaves and it's going to be horrible, but you're going to live under harsh circumstances. But when you leave, you are going to be the most fearsome army the world has ever seen to that point. Because when they leave Egypt, yeah, they go out in the wilderness 40 years, whatever, but there's hundreds of thousands of them. And then they go out into the wilderness, and whenever they leave, yeah, they're seeing all these signs, but they stay 40 years until they're all devout.
Hmm.
Like, all of them are ready to die for the Lord. And so whenever you get out there and they walk into Jericho the first time, you know what I mean? Like, I couldn't imagine.
Well, and something that I didn't know until the other day or didn't think about,
Hmm.
the 400 years in Egypt actually served to keep the Israelites pure.
Hmm.
Because before this, uh, before they actually go to Egypt, we'll read about it a little later. One of Abram's daughters, I believe, maybe it's Isaac's daughters. Anyway, one of the daughters gets raped by a Canaanite who then proceeds to try to marry
So
her.
it's the one of Abram's servants.
It was Dinah.
Yeah, I think it's
It was
either.
a sister, I thought.
I don't think it's his sister. We'll read in a minute. You're right. It is coming up in a minute. But what happens is, so they're passing by a town. Uh, you're right. I can't remember if it's Canaanite, but it's someone of those signs, and they do. But in the end, the guy's trying to make it right. The guy's like, "I'll marry her," blah blah blah, and
Yeah,
Abram says, "Okay,
but you have
that's
to be
fine, but you have
circumcised.
to be circumcised." And then they circumcise him, and I want to say it's the nephew. I think it's
It's
nephews.
his
I don't know.
sons that go in and kill everybody.
Yeah.
But anyway, um, so that story, it seems kind of out of place because it's just randomly there.
Hmm.
But the rape of Dinah and the uh, Canaanite that decided he wanted to marry her after that shows that the locals in the area that were living with Abram
Hmm.
wanted to intermarry with the Israelites, and the 400 years of exile in Egypt actually uh, kept the bloodlines pure
Sure.
and kept them from intermarrying, which is one of their biggest downfalls
Yeah, it
consistently.
starts to almost immediately with Esau.
Um, but the Egyptians absolutely despised shepherds, thought they were
Yep.
disgusting, hated everything they
That's
stood
why
for.
they have to go and live on Lake Gashawn,
Yep,
is because it's a herder's area.
yep.
Yep. Mhm.
So that's just an interesting little
Yep.
way that to look at the 400 years of exile.
Again, more between the lines that he's not really telling them
Yep.
for reasons. Yep.
Okay, so
16.
I went backwards. Sarai and Hagar. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, Behold, now the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go into my servant. It may be that I shall obtain a child by her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. So after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Abram's wife took Hagar the Egyptian, her servant, and gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife. He went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked up with contempt on her mistress. And Sarai said to Abram, May the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my servant to your embrace, and when she saw she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarai, Behold, your servant is in your power, do as you please. Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness. The spring was on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going? She said, I am fleeing from my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Return to your mistress and submit to her. The angel of the Lord said to her, I will surely multiply your offspring, so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction. He shall be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. He shall dwell over against his kinsmen. So she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, You're a God of seeing, for she said, Truly I have seen him who looks after me. Therefore the well was called Bir Lahai Roy. It lies between Kadesh and Bered, and Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of the son whom Hagar bore Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram.
So there's a couple interesting tidbits about Ishmael. Um, and again, I am no kind of scholar, especially on the Quran, but allegedly Muhammad is the descendant of Ishmael. Um, but there are some contention on whether or not Muhammad actually was his descendant. There's a bunch of stuff going on. There's a lot of really that's the bad thing about the internet. You can get some really strong arguments for and against. All you got to do is change how you Google. But the other thing I like to think about is we operate under the Julian Gregorian calendar. Julius Caesar made that calendar, right? So I've always thought about whenever, let's say, Lot or Abram or somebody, let's say they live 500 years, right? Okay. So 500 years to us is like 6,000 months, right? So what if there was only 9 months in the Hebrew calendar? And I'm sure we can research, I'm sure we know, but like it could be days, it could be months, it could be a variety of things. That all it has to do is be a little bit shorter, right? Let's say it's a quarter of the way shorter, right? So then let's say if an average man lives to 100 years old, and the according to our current um, calendar,
Calendar.
then if you go back to that calendar, taking that math, he lived 125 years. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
granted, that's a huge, like you're going from 100 to 900 in the Older Testament type stuff. But it's just one way that I think that people overlook very easily on the age thing. We don't know how they were counting, and I think there's 13 months in the Hebrew calendar, and I think there's like 28 days, and it may be almost dead even, but it's just something that I've always thought about. Uh, the sign of the covenant, Genesis 17. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am the sovereign Lord, walk before me and be blameless. Then I will confirm my covenant between me and you, and I will give you a multitude of descendants. Abram bowed down with his face to the ground, and God said to him, As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer will your name be Abram. Instead, your name will be Abraham, because I will make you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you extremely fruitful. I will make nations to you, and kings will descend from you. I will confirm my covenant as a perpetual covenant between me and you. I will extend to your descendants after you throughout their generations. I will be your God, and the God of your descendants after you. I will give the whole land of Canaan, the land where you are now residing, to you and your descendants after you as a permanent possession. I will be their God. Then God said to Abraham, as for you, you must keep the cultural covenantal requirement I am imposing on you and your descendants after you throughout their generations. This is my requirement that you and your descendants after you must keep. Every male among you must be circumcised. You must be circumcised the flesh of your foreskin. This will be a reminder of the covenant between me and you. Throughout your generations, every male among you who is 8 days old must be circumcised, whether born in your house or bought with money from any foreigner who is not one of your descendants. They must indeed be circumcised, whether born in your house or bought with money. The sign of my covenant will be visible in your flesh as a permanent reminder. Any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh of the foreskin will be cut off from his people. He has failed to carry out my requirement. And God said to Abraham, as for your wife, you must no longer call her Sarai. Sarah will be her name. I will bless her and will give you a son through her. I will bless her and she will become a nation, a mother of nations. King of countries will come from her. Then Abram bowed down with his face to the ground and laughed as he said to himself, can a son be born to a man who is 100 years old? Can Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. God said, no, Sarah, your wife, is going to bear you a son, and you will name him Isaac. I will confirm my covenant with him as a perpetual covenant for his descendants after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will indeed bless him, make him fruitful, and give him a multitude of descendants. He will become the father of 12 princes. I will make him into a great nation, but I will establish my covenant with Isaac from Sarah, will bear to you at this set time next year. When he finished speaking with Abraham, God went from him. Abraham took his son Ishmael and every male in his household and circumcised them on that very same day, just as God had told him to do. Now, Abram was 99 years old when he was circumcised. His son Ishmael was 13 years old when he was circumcised. Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised on the very same day. All the men of the household, whether born in his house or bought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with him.
So, uh, just a quick note on the covenant of
Mm-hmm.
circumcision. So, we talked about how God's going to keep his covenant no
Yep.
matter what. Your participation is not required, but the covenant of the circumcision is basically God's way of saying, are you committed? Are you going to
Yep.
participate? Are you going to be in this with me?
Well, and he's smart because there is no more serious way to prove that you are doing what you're doing than cutting off a piece of your willy. Like he was not playing around.
Yeah, that's a definitely.
Mm-hmm. I just would love to have been a fly on the wall whenever he went in and was like, hey, everybody, no big deal. Nothing to see here, but I need everybody to drop their robe. Just be a hard sale.
Yeah, that it would.
I'm sure a bunch of dudes ran. I mean,
Well, it says all of them that were in his house were circumcised.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, different world back then, I guess.
Okay, chapter 18. And the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre, and he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day, and he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the earth and said, O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree, while I bring a morsel of bread, that you may refreshen yourselves, and that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant. So they said, do as you have said. And Abraham went quickly to the tent to Sarah and said, quick, 3 seahs of fine flour. Knead it and make cakes. And Abram ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to a young man who prepared it quickly. Then he took curds of milk and the calf and had separated and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree while they ate.
It's interesting to note, and this is something I've never really, I mean, I'm not like a critical detail or anything, but those dudes weren't stopping at Abraham.
Mm-mm.
They were just walking by.
Mm-hmm.
And if Abraham had not been a gracious host and did the things that he did right there, and like it, I mean, I assume that he knows that they're angels. You know what I mean? Because the way Abraham does not call very many people Lord.
Right.
And he calls these 3 dudes that are walking by his camp, he knows nothing about, stops them and is like, hey, 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 don't go anywhere. And so if he had not been a gracious host and done a godly thing, then Lot would be dead.
Presumably.
Yeah, presumably, of course.
Yeah. Uh, it does say down here in my little notes that The polite term of respect, my lord, has a slight difference than the O Lord that
Mm.
is translated here.
Again, you have
One
to
is
go
divine
that whole thousands of centuries of or hundreds of centuries of um dialect and stuff
and
like that's very
translation.
very hard to because again that's a conversational thing. That's like us saying bro.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like if anyone other than our time heard somebody talk the way we talk today, then they would assume that everybody was related. You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Yeah, true. Um, anyway, they said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And he said, "She is in the tent." The Lord said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, shall have a son." And Sarah was listening at the tent door behind him. Now Abram and Sarah were old, advanced in years. The way of women had ceased to be with Sarah. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure?" The Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child now that I'm old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son." But Sarah denied it, saying, "I did not laugh, for she was afraid." He said, "No, but you did laugh." Then the men set out from there, and they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them to set them on their way. The Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him? For I have chosen him that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring Abraham what he has promised him."
Again, further accents my point that he would not have known had he not done a godly thing.
hmm Then the Lord said, "Because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sins are very grave, I will go down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me. If not, I will know.
That's
So,
also that alone is a weird state. That argues against God's omniscience because if he didn't already know and he just heard rumors, like it really doesn't make sense. Like if God knew
hmm
what they were doing down there, if he didn't know, why would he send the angels? So I prescribe that this is not God talking. I think that this is the angel speaking.
hmm
And I think when it says the Lord, it's the same thing as whenever he says my Lord at the beginning. I don't think that it's specifically God.
um, So, a lot of translations or theories say that it was two angels and Jesus before he was
So I was just
embodied.
fixing to point out, which is another irony. If you read 18:1, or I'm sorry, it's in 18:2, I guess. Looked up and saw three men standing across from him, and then go back out to 20:22. Sorry, 15 or 18:22. The two men turned and headed towards Sodom.
Mine just says, "So the men turned
Yeah,
from
mine
there."
specifically says two men. So again, could just be some kind of weird translation error. Where'd the third guy go?
Um, it does say down here in my little study thing
Mm-hmm.
that when it says, "I will go down to see," does not mean that God's knowledge is limited compared to 11:5. It simply means he is giving his direct attention to the matter.
Mm.
So, I guess that's one way to look at it. Um, Where was I? So the men turned from there and went toward Sodom, but Abraham stood before the Lord. Then Abraham drew near and said, "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you then sweep away the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to put the righteous to death with the wicked, so that the righteous fare as the wicked. Far be it from you. Shall the judge of the earth do what is just?" And the Lord said, "If I find that Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Abraham answered and said, "Behold, I have undertaken to speak with the Lord, who I am but dust and ashes. Suppose 5 of the 50 righteous are lacking. Will you destroy the whole city for a lack of 5? And he said, "I will not destroy it, and if I find 45 there." And again he spoke to him and said, "Suppose 40 are found there." He answered, "For the sake of 40, I will not do it." Then he said, "Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Suppose 30 are found there." He answered, I will not do it if I find 30 there. He said, Behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 are found. And he answered, For the sake of 20, I will not destroy it. Then he said, Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak again, but this once. Suppose 10 are found there. He answered, For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. And the Lord went his way when he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place.
The Seems like that's probably a pretty good place to stop. We're at about 30 minutes. We'll start tomorrow with the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Looks like the baby's awake anyway. So thanks for joining, guys, and we will see you tomorrow.